In the third day of its renewed attacks, Russia on Tuesday rained missiles on prominent Ukrainian cities. Hundreds of missiles and drones struck the capital Kiev and Kharkiv, causing widespread damage. At least 5 civilians were killed and dozens of others were reported wounded. In retaliation, Ukrainian missiles killed at least 1 man and injured at least 7 others in Belgorod, which is near Russia's border with Ukraine. The escalated strikes follow a trend that has seen Russia escalate its airstrikes during winters. Last year, Russia's similar tactic targeted infrastructure, especially energy and heating, leaving millions of Ukrainians struggling to stay warm. On the third day of airstrikes since New Year's Eve, Ukrainian officials said Russia fired at least 99 missiles. It claimed that it shot down 72 of them. Ukraine's defense minister also claimed that Moscow was deliberately targeting residential areas.
Дорогі українці, українки, 2 січня 24 року знову удар російських нелюдей.
Dear Ukrainians, on January 2, 2024, there were once again strikes from the Russian non-humans. They used almost 100 missiles of different kinds. At least 70 missiles were shot down, almost 60 of them in the Kiev area. There also were brutal strikes on Kharkiv.
Врятувала вже щонайменше сотні життів. А за кожне забране життя Росія відповідатиме. Слава Україні!
Sirens rang through the city of Kiev as rescue services rushed to areas hit by debris from missiles downed by Ukraine's air defense systems. Military authorities rang out air alerts for at least 3 hours. The Russian missile attack near Kiev toppled high-rise flats, warehouses and even supermarkets. Power and water supplies were cut to several areas of the capital and gas pipelines were damaged in one district.
А потом, как оно упало, сильно бахнуло, и начали лететь стекла, окна в квартире. Боженька, это какое страхиття страшное. Подумайте, только за что?
Seeking ammunition support, Ukraine on Tuesday called on its allies to accelerate deliveries of weapons. Kiev's foreign minister urged Western countries to respond decisively to the attack, including accelerating the supply of additional air defense systems, combat drones of all types, and long-range missiles. Poland dispatched 4 F-16 fighter jets to its eastern border to protect its airspace after the Russian missile attacks on neighboring Ukraine. The escalating violence in Ukraine comes after a combative interview by Zelensky to The Economist. The president said that the notion that Russia was winning the nearly 2-year-old war was only a feeling and that Moscow is still suffering heavy battlefield losses. Fred Fleitz is the vice chairman of America First Policy Institute Center for American Security, is also the former NSC chief of staff, CIA analyst, and House Intelligence Committee staff member. Fred is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Fred, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Talk to us about these recent bombings in Kiev and Kharkiv. The intensity has risen since the onset of the new year. And why does Ukraine keep targeting Belgorod? Will there not be any repercussions of that from Russia's side?
Well, we've seen a series of retaliatory strikes. It seems that the Ukrainians struck first with devastating attacks on Russian ships in the Black Sea. Russia then attacked with over 100 missiles and drones against Ukraine. Then Ukraine attacked southern Russia, which it began attacking southern Russia last spring. But what's interesting about this Russian attack, which had much larger than we've seen in some time, was the sophistication of the missiles, the number of the missiles, the fact that Russia was able to send these sophisticated missiles despite trade sanctions. And I think that means substantial cheating on sanctions against Russia, probably by China. I also believe this massive missile attack by Russia was an attempt to probe Ukrainian missile defenses, to see how much better it has improved in 2023. We know it got more advanced air defenses, and to see how it is possible to overwhelm this defense for an upcoming Russian offensive. I think it's a very bad omen.
Fred, let's talk about the winter offensive. Russia did this last winter, subjected so many Ukrainians to freezing cold temperatures. What's the motive, you think, and why the winters? And also another question, are Ukrainian troops getting tired?
Well, there are many in the U.S., especially Republicans in the U.S. Congress, who are concerned that this has become a stalemate, that Ukraine will eventually lose. There have been many reports that Ukraine is running out of soldiers, that Ukraine is losing a whole generation of young men in this conflict. And I'm sympathetic to those concerns. I think that the U.S. and Europe and the Ukrainian government has to start pursuing some type of peace process. I don't want Ukraine to give up any of its territorial claims. I think they should be resolved later. But I think the trajectory of this war is very bad for Ukraine, because Russia is capable of fighting on almost indefinitely, but Ukraine is going to run out of resources. Even with these advanced weapons, Russia is making changes. It is adapting its approaches so it won't be vulnerable to some of these weapons. It has dug itself in quite deeply along the eastern front of Ukraine. So I think there is going to be changes, and we're hearing in Washington that the Biden administration is changing tactics, and it may start to push the Ukrainian government to pursue a ceasefire and peace talks.
Fred, you did not answer my question in regards to the winter offensive. Why do you think Russia is more aggressive during the winters?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to not answer your question. I think that Putin, especially this winter, he sees fatigue by the West for supporting Ukraine. And I believe he's engaging in this very vicious attack against Ukrainian civilians to push for peace talks on his terms. It's outrageous. It's a war crime. It's the way Putin fights wars. And I just don't think that the solution is apparent right now on how to stop Russia from doing this. I believe there has to be a halt to the war. We have to arm Ukraine heavily so Russia cannot invade again, and pursue peace talks to eventually resolve this dispute and get Russia out of Ukrainian territory.
All right, I've been talking to Fred Fleitz, who's the Vice Chairman of America First Policy Institute Center for American Security. Fred, thank you very much for talking to us today.
Good to be here.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.